All right.
This is a case
Here we
about
go.
Carly Madison Gregg. Carly Gregg has been charged with murdering her mother, Ashley Smiley, and attempting to murder her stepfather, Heath Smiley. She's also been charged with tampering with physical evidence for removing a camera and hiding it that captured a portion of the events. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear testimony throughout the next few days during this case. You'll hear about some secret life that Carly lived. You'll hear that Carly had a secret boyfriend. You'll hear that Carly had a secret iPod, that she had secret social media accounts that she was using to communicate with people on this iPod when her parents had taken her phone away. You'll hear that she was secretly cutting on her thigh using a knife. You'll hear that she secretly had burner phones her mom and stepdad didn't know about that she was using. You'll hear that she had secret weed vape pens and that she was secretly smoking those vape pens and getting high before going to school at times. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not why we're here, though. We're here because of what she did on March the 19th, 2024. We expect that you'll hear that Carly is the daughter of Ashley Smiley, the stepdaughter of Heath Smiley, that Heath and Ashley were married sometime in 2020. You'll hear that Carly's biological father had not been in her life for about a year or more, that he was a known drug user, had violent and angry tendencies. You'll hear that back in January, Carly got in trouble with her parents when they found this iPod, that they got onto her for using these secret accounts and for communicating with people. You'll hear that around the same time that she had this boyfriend they found out about and that they asked her to break up with him and that later they found out she was still seeing this boy. You'll hear at some point that Carly got in trouble at school. She was cheating. She'd found the answers to a test and gave them to the other students. You'll hear that all of this was happening about the same time that they found out Carly was cutting on her legs. You'll hear that as a concerned parent, what they did was they got Carly in therapy. She was being treated for anxiety and stress. You'll hear that she continued smoking those vape pens.
Pause it. Look at the look on her face. And then you got the picture up here. But just look at the look on her face, though. Man. I don't know. I don't know.
Even after in therapy. So now I want to take you to the real reason we're here and what you'll hear. We're here because on March the 19th, 2024, Carly rode to school with her mother that day. Ashley was a school teacher at Northwest Rankin, taught geometry. Carly was in the 10th grade. You'll hear that morning, she got in a little altercation with one of her friends, cussed him out. But what you'll hear, ladies and gentlemen, from the testimony of this friend is that he was so worried. So worried about Carly's use of smoking marijuana and so worried about her being high and so worried about her having these burner phones that her mom didn't know about that he...
So the friend knew about the burner phones. Did he also know about the boyfriend as well?
He felt compelled to tell Miss Ashley Smiley that day. Ladies and gentlemen, after the incident with Carly that morning, you'll hear that he gets in touch with another friend and he's like, hey, you got to keep her distracted so I can go tell Miss Smiley what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, this friend cared about Carly. He was like, I gotta intervene. I gotta tell her. I'm afraid of what's happening. You'll hear from him that he did in fact tell Miss Smiley. That after 4th block that day, he goes and he tells Miss Smiley, hey, Carly has got these vapes. She's got this phone. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear then that Carly Gregg rides in the car home with her mother from school to their house. They leave school sometime after 3:30. They get home a little before 4. You'll hear that when they get inside the house, it's only their 2 dogs, Ashley Smiley and Carly Gregg. Immediately, Carly goes and lets the dogs out. You'll hear testimony that Ashley then goes into Carly's room. You'll hear that while Ashley is in her room, that Carly's still outside. At some point, Ashley finds what law enforcement believe to be the 4 boxes that contain vape pens. Testimony will be that we believe she carried them from Carly's room to her bedroom, went back to search in Carly's room. The evidence will show that almost immediately upon Carly coming inside the house, that she walks straight to her parents' bedroom, that she goes straight to her mom's side of the bed and removes a .357 Magnum from under the mattress. We believe the testimony will be that then she concealed that .357 Magnum behind her back. As she walked through the kitchen, she peeks her head around. We believe the testimony will show that she peeks her head around the kitchen to make sure that her mom hasn't come out of her bedroom. We believe the evidence will then show that she walked with that .357 Magnum behind her back, walked in to her own bedroom, and then fired 3 shots into her mother, killing her. We believe the testimony will then be that that very moment after she shot and killed her mother, she then hides that gun back out of the camera, walks back into that kitchen, sits down on a stool with a gun behind her, picks up her mother's cell phone, puts her mom's passcode into the phone. We believe the testimony will be that then she texts her stepdad and said something to the effect of, "When will you be home, honey?" Testimony will be that then she waited for him to respond. "I'll be a little bit longer." She sends him a thumbs up. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe the testimony will then be that after she puts the phone back down and walks out of sight with the camera, that between the next 45 minutes or so, that the defendant reaches out to or attempts to reach out to about 5 or 6 of her friends. Some were FaceTimes, some were text messages. We believe the evidence will show that during this time, she was asking them all for help, trying to get them to come over to her house. She wouldn't tell them why. We believe that one of them's going to say he even offered to call 911, and she told him no. The evidence will also be that one of these friends did, in fact, come over to help Carly that day. She didn't know why, but she knew that her friend needed help, and she went to that home. We believe the evidence will show that when that friend arrived at Carly's house, that Carly walked to the front door, asked her, "Are you squeamish around dead bodies?" We believe the evidence will show that then she took that friend and showed her her dead mother laying on the floor. We believe the evidence will show that after that, she says, "I put 3 in my mom, and I got 3 more waiting for my stepdad when he gets home." We believe the evidence will show that then she tells this friend, "Hey, why don't you go wait outside in the backyard? My stepdad's about to be home." This friend will testify that she does go.
Look at her now. Look at her now. Now she's trying to show the emotion. Now she has. This happened when March 19th. It's now September, so she had some time. She's had some time to sit and think about her actions. So she could, that could be a real grief there.
In the backyard, and she hears gunshots. And the next thing she sees is Carly coming out of the back door. We believe the testimony will be that she fell down, coming out of the back door, gets up and tells her to run. And these 2 individuals, this friend and Carly, jump over the fence and run separate directions.
Separate directions. How did they catch her?
You'll hear testimony that there was a 911 call. You'll hear a frantic Heath Smiley telling the dispatcher, "Oh my God, she's killed her mother. She hit me in the neck, it grazed me, she tried to kill me too, she's run off." You'll hear from law enforcement when they arrived on the scene that Carly Gregg had fled the scene. You'll hear from law enforcement that when they arrived on the scene, Ashley Smiley was very much dead in the floor in Carly's bedroom, and that they found that Heath Smiley had been shot and hit in the shoulder, a through and through. You will hear from law enforcement that sometime after the day of the event, they learned that there was cameras involved, that this home had surveillance video.
She's nodding to that. Lord.
You'll learn that one of those videos was...
I'm just watching how she's reacting. She just nodded to that. Like, yeah, a surveillance video. Look at her up here. Now, I remember when I first saw this case, she was dressed like this. I believe this was in July. She was dressed like this. And this is when I believe they had some type of plea deal for her. But for whatever reason, or it could have been her legal team, they told her to not take it, or I don't know how they got to the point where I guess they believe they can get off on whatever this is, whatever their defense is going to be. But yeah, they tried to make her look innocent. They had like a little schoolgirl uniform type thing going on here. Tried to make her look as innocent as possible. But that face does not look innocent at all. Jeez. Especially what she just saw because of what she just did. Okay, her innocence is gone. All right, so let's continue this.
Was turned over by the living victim, Heath Smiley, and it shows Carly Gregg and her friend jumping over the fence. And then you'll learn that there was another camera in the house on March the 19th, 2024. That camera was in the kitchen, and that's the camera that Carly was hiding the gun out of sight of. And you'll hear that camera was not in the kitchen when law enforcement got there, and it was not in the kitchen where it should have been when Heath Smiley got there. It wasn't until sometime later that camera was discovered.
Oh, so she moved the camera before the stepdad made it home. That's more premeditation, right? Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear that Ashley Smiley's cause of death, gunshot wounds
Look at the lip.
Ashley Smiley's manner of death, homicide. You will hear that Heath Smiley says, Carly Gregg is the one that shot at me. And on his 911 call, he said that she tried to kill him. You'll hear him say that he did not move that camera, the only other person living in the home. Ladies and gentlemen, you also hear from forensic scientists from the Mississippi Forensics Laboratory. You'll hear that both of Carly Gregg's hands tested positive for gunshot residue, both the right and the left. You'll hear that the .357 Magnum that was used to kill her mother and shoot her stepfather, they took swabs. They took a swab of the trigger, and they took a swab of the hammer. And you will hear that the DNA profile that matches those swabs belongs to Carly Gregg. Ladies and gentlemen, you will also hear that there were 2 projectiles removed from Carly Gregg's mother, Ashley Smiley. One in her brain, one in her neck. And that those projectiles were tested with ballistics, and that those projectiles matched the .357 Magnum that Heath Smiley took out of Carly Gregg's hand that day on March the 19th, 2024. And ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this trial, after you've heard the evidence, the state will stand before you, and we will ask that you find Carly Gregg guilty of murder, attempted murder, and tampering with physical evidence. Thank you, Your Honor.
That's it. Okay. So you just heard the prosecution and how they're going to fight this thing. Now let's listen to the state. I mean, not the the prosecution was the state. Let's listen to her defense, and let's see how they plan on defending her. How could you? What would be the plan? Because you couldn't go, mom's a school teacher. I don't know. Let's just see. All right, here we go.
Good afternoon. I know it's been a long morning for you all, so I will try to do this as briefly as possible. This is not a whodunit case. We know who took action on March 19th to bring about the death of Ashley Smiley and the injuries to Heath Smiley.
Mm-hmm.
However, this is a why case. Why did it happen?
Why?
Why did this exceptional child with no history of violence, who was loved by her friends, her teachers, her parents, who had a good home life, who loved her mother, why did she shoot her mom? Why did she shoot at her stepfather? The state would like you to believe
she
the
shot
answer
her
to those
stepfather.
questions don't matter, but we know better than that. The answers to those questions is why we're here today, and it's what you're here to do. We believe the evidence will show that there were 3 victims on March 19th: Ashley Smiley, Heath Smiley, and Carly Gregg. That they were all 3 victims. We believe the evidence will show that Carly had been suffering from a mental illness, that Carly was not aware on March 19th that she had a mental illness. We believe the evidence will show that Carly's parents, who lived with her, were not aware that Carly was suffering from a mental illness. We believe the evidence will
Not
show
aware that she's mental.
Carly's
Okay.
close friends who saw her at school every day were not aware that Carly was suffering from a mental illness, because it's hard to look at a person and understand that they have a mental illness. It's hard to look at a person and know that they have a mental illness. That's why it's often referred to as the invisible disease. A person can exhibit symptoms of a mental illness without people necessarily knowing that they have one, or other people necessarily knowing that's what another person has. While the events on March 19th were tragic, the events on March 19th were not intentional. The evidence will show,
Not
and the
intentional.
testimony will show.
Not intentional. Okay. Remember that. Not intentional. Removing of the gun, texting the father to come home, hiding the gun from the camera, removing the camera before the dad got home. That sounds very intentional to me. But let's continue.
That Carly Gregg loved her mother. That Carly Gregg and her mother had a loving, close relationship. Carly Gregg's mom loved her. In fact, her life revolved around Carly,
Okay.
as parents' lives often do revolve around their children.
Mm-hmm.
Carly very much wanted to please her mother. Carly was an exceptional student, made a 30 on the ACT when she was 13 years old. She was the apple of her mother and her stepfather's eye. And you will understand by the conclusion of this hearing why Carly's stepfather is still supporting her and standing behind her. Because he knows on March 19th, there were 3 victims: Ashley, Heath, and Carly.
If this happened to you, let's say if this was your stepdaughter, would you be able to continue to support her after? I don't know. I don't know if I... man. But we'll get to him in another video. I'm pretty sure he's going to take the stand. I wonder if there's going to be like a cross-examination. I'm pretty sure there'll be a cross-examination for him. Oh, yeah. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
The state will ask you to take your good judgment, to take your common sense, and to put it in a bucket, to put the lid on the bucket, and to toss the bucket out of this courtroom. We implore you not to do that, to retain your common sense, to retain your good judgment, and to make sure that you are listening to the evidence as it's presented, because it doesn't matter how many witnesses the state puts on, their story is filled with inconsistencies because they're not telling the whole story.
Okay, we'll see. Got my notes. Get my notepad.
The evidence will not show that Carly was ever deemed dangerous by anyone. The evidence will not show that Carly ever had any desire to hurt her mother. The evidence will not show that Carly ever had any desire to hurt any person. The evidence will not show that Carly invited people over to her house to view her mom's body. What it will show is that on March 19th, a hysterical Carly called her closest friends, begging them for help, begging them to help her. The evidence will show that Carly did not recognize Heath Smiley when he got home that day. You'll hear that from him himself. The evidence will show that Carly was so terrified when Heath Smiley got home on March 19th that even after Carly left the house, Heath walked around the house with the handgun in his hand looking for an intruder because he was convinced by Carly, by how she appeared, by how she acted, by what she did that day, by the child he had known for years that he was seeing on that day, that she was terrified, something horrible would happen, and that there must have been someone else in that house to cause that kind of terror in Carly. What the evidence will not show
I'm pretty sure
is that
that's not matching
Carly
up.
had a drug problem.
I'm gonna pause it here. What she says not matching up because when I got into I actually already listened to the 911 call. And he clearly states it was her. Now maybe he was in shock afterwards. I believe he wrestled the gun away from her. Okay, I'm gonna notate that. What's the time? 6:22. In that video. And she said something earlier too. I can't remember. Should have noted.
What the evidence will not show is that Carly and her mother had any argument on March 19th. What the evidence will not show is that Carly had any desire to hurt her stepfather. What the evidence will not show is that Ashley Smiley was angry when she left school that day.
Yeah, but she texted him to come home.
Or that Ashley Smiley was upset with Carly
when
she left school that day. Or that after they got home on March 19th, Ashley and Carly engaged in an argument.
Okay.
The evidence will not show that Ashley Smiley found anything in Carly's bedroom that would have caused an argument. The evidence will not show that Carly intended to hurt anyone. The evidence will not show that Carly has not grieved her mother's loss.
Okay, I buy that. I believe that one.
The evidence will not show that law enforcement did their due diligence in investigating this matter.
That's a possibility, but we'll see.
The evidence will not show that Carly was abusing or misusing prescription medication. The evidence will not show that Carly had a secret life, but rather was just a teenager who had a life that her parents didn't know everything about. That's called having a teenager and being a parent. The evidence will not show that Carly had ever tried to harm another person, had ever had a desire to hurt another person. The evidence will not show that Carly is a monster, that Carly was a difficult child, a troubled child, or a deranged child. The evidence will not show that Carly Gregg does not deserve you to return a verdict of not guilty. Now, the evidence will show that Carly had a family
Wait, did she say she
history
does
of
not
mental
deserve a
illness.
not guilt? What?
In fact, it was well documented.
What did she say?
The evidence will show that Carly Gregg does not deserve you to return a verdict of not guilty.
She does not deserve to
No.
return a verdict of not guilty. I think
The
she
evidence will
misspoke.
show that Carly had a family history of mental illness. In fact, it was well documented. The evidence will show that Carly was concerned that something was wrong with her. She wrote journal entries about it. The evidence will show that Carly was afraid she had the same mental illness that her father had. The evidence will show that Carly's mother had worried for years about Carly having the same mental illness that her father had.
But didn't earlier she just stated that her mother wasn't aware of a mental illness? Now she's stating that her mother was worried, that she's afraid that she might have the same mental illness. Carly wasn't aware of a mental illness. Her mother wasn't aware of mental illness, but now her mother is afraid that she might have it. Wouldn't that mean that she would be aware of the potential mental illness that her biological father has?
The evidence will show that Carly was very emotionally tied into her mother's emotions, and that Carly never wanted her mother to worry about her. The evidence will show that Carly was scared of how her mother would react to the knowledge that if Carly had the same mental illness that her father had. That doesn't sound like a child that doesn't love her mom. And that doesn't sound like a child who has any intention of hurting her mother. The state would like you to believe that it's normal for a child to go home from school one day with their mother, who they love, and shoot her, but nothing's wrong.
No, it's not normal. I don't think the state's trying to...
marijuana. Or because she was on social media and her mom didn't want her on social media. But again, we ask you to retain your common sense and to retain your good...
I think it's a combination of three things. For that potential mental illness, whatever prescriptions she's on for the stress and anxiety, and of course the weed on top of that. Whatever, because I know the mental illness in taking was HTC, THC, whatever it is, they don't mix well. So, okay.
Judgment, because we know that just doesn't make sense. And at the end of this trial, if the state's case still leaves you feeling like their version of events just doesn't make sense, then you must return a verdict of not guilty.
Okay. And that was the defense. Some what I feel, what I believe to be some inconsistencies there when she said that Carly wasn't aware of a mental illness, mother wasn't aware of a mental illness, stepfather wasn't aware of a mental illness, but then turns right around and says mom was afraid that she'd had the same mental illness as her stepfather. That would indicate that she is aware of a potential mental illness. So that I don't know, if I was a defense attorney, I wouldn't want this. Next vid will be, we'll jump back into it. Next vid will be the 911 call, because I've already listened to it, let you guys hear that. And I think the stepfather took the stand. So I want to hear what he has to say, because there's she gets home, shoots him. In the call, he states that it's her. But then afterwards, he wrestles the gun away from her and she runs off. And then afterwards, he walks around the house and couldn't believe it was her. And then another thing, how did she get arrested? Did she come back home? They don't state how she was taken into custody or anything. I guess it doesn't matter as much as the other acts. So, and then the hiding of the camera before the dad got there and hiding the gun behind her back and then texting him. So it's not looking good for the defense. I certainly don't envy them, and I don't want to be I wouldn't want to be in their shoes for this case. So we'll see. I'll see you guys in the next video. We'll continue on.